Welcome to The Explainer. So, have you ever spent weeks, months, or maybe even years chasing down a specific goal, only to cross that finish line and feel entirely underwhelmed? That happens, right? Today, we are unpacking a really fascinating psychological concept that explains exactly why that happens. It's an idea called the intention of satisfaction. Okay, let's dive into this. Actually, let's really think about this for a second. Have you ever finally gotten exactly what you wanted, only to feel surprisingly empty? It's such a universally frustrating experience. We build up these massive, almost cinematic expectations around an argument we desperately want to win, a big purchase we've been saving up for, or an accommodation we ask for at work. We make the request, we get literally exactly what we asked for, and yet, the victory just feels entirely hollow. So, why does that happen? Well, often it comes down to just human laziness or a simple lack of self-awareness. You see, we completely obsess over the asking part, but we basically ignore the receiving part. The source material calls this the intention of satisfaction. It's defined as knowing exactly how you will feel and what the net outcome is for you when a problem is resolved or a desire is met. Now, what's really interesting here is the massive psychological trap we all regularly fall into. Think about it. We constantly make requests, voice complaints, and demand solutions from others without actually knowing the net outcome for ourselves. We know what we don't want. We don't want to be stressed, we don't want to be ignored, but we haven't mapped out the emotional baseline of what a successful resolution actually feels like. Frankly, it's just much easier to react than to intentionally define our own happiness. So let's see how this plays out in real life. The first scenario is something we are all absolutely guilty of: complaining. Think about the last time you went to a friend, a colleague, or a family member to explain a problem or lodge a complaint. Our default mode in these moments is usually just to lay out the issue, often at length, right? And expect the other person to somehow just fix it for us, or at the very least, validate our misery. But the source text flips this dynamic entirely back onto the person doing the complaining. And this brilliantly illustrates two very different approaches. On one hand, you've got complaining just to vent. We've all been there. Essentially, it's emotional dumping. You unload your frustrations onto someone else without any clear goal. It leaves them exhausted, and it leaves you still agitated. On the other hand, you have complaining with an actual awareness of how the resolution feels and what the net benefit is to you. Aimless complaining leaves the other person guessing and leaves you perpetually unsatisfied. Outcome-focused communication, though, that means you must be completely aware of how you would feel when the issue is resolved before you even open your mouth. You literally have to know what a win looks like for your own nervous system. Okay, the second scenario moves us from general complaints into the realm of intimate relationships. Now, this is where we most often expect the other person to just magically read our minds and know exactly what will make us happy. We drop hints, we act mildly annoyed, and we just wait for our significant other to crack the code. But let's be real, relying on your partner's telepathic abilities is a terrible strategy for long-term happiness. When you approach your partner with a specific requirement or desire, there has to be a conscious framework behind it. There are distinct, intentional steps to making this work. Step one is simply expressing the requirement or desire. But the real magic happens in steps 2 and 3, knowing how you will take it when it's satisfied and knowing exactly how you will feel. Let's say you ask your partner to plan date night for once. If they do it, but you spend the whole night critiquing their restaurant choice because you didn't predefine what a successful night out actually felt like to you, well, you're setting both of you up for failure. Relationship satisfaction requires defining this emotional baseline of success before the desire is even met by your partner. You really have to take responsibility for your own reaction. But hey, this concept isn't strictly reserved for our personal lives either. Let's take this straight into the office. Negotiating with your boss. Imagine walking into your manager's office with a workplace requirement. Maybe you need a new piece of software, a change in your schedule, or a specific necessity met just to do your job properly. The dynamic here shifts from personal vulnerability to professional leverage, but the underlying psychology of satisfaction, it remains exactly the same. Let's move on and see how this builds in a professional setting, because the framework evolves a bit here. Step 1 remains specifying your requirement, but Step 2 introduces a brand new dynamic for the workplace, specifying what you give in return. You can't just drop a problem on a manager's desk. You have to define the mutual value exchange. And then Step 3 brings it all back home, specifying how it makes you feel when that necessity is met. If you ask for a flexible schedule, you need to articulate that you're offering higher productivity in return. And importantly, you need to internally know that securing this flexibility will actually make you feel focused and relieved, rather than just feeling isolated at home. You have to define the impact on your workflow and your well-being. So, we've looked at personal complaints, intimate desires, and professional negotiations. But what is the ultimate cost of ignoring all of this? What is the actual tangible value of this level of clarity? Let's just pause for a moment to really think about the ultimate consequence of ignoring this overarching communication rule. If we just keep asking for things blindly, without doing the hard, sometimes vulnerable work of knowing the emotional end state we're aiming for, we hit a profound roadblock. The source text draws a surprisingly heavy conclusion here. It says, without this clarity and intention in mind, all the requirements and desires will lose their value and excitement when they are achieved. Think about how profound that is. So the crucial point is that your achievements literally mean nothing. They lose all their value, all their excitement, if you haven't done the internal work of predefining that emotional clarity. You get the concession from your partner, but you feel empty. You win the negotiation with your boss, but you feel unfulfilled. The victory itself just isn't enough. The intention behind the satisfaction is what actually gives the victory its weight. Which leaves us with one final, pretty provocative question. Next time you ask for something, do you actually know how you will feel when you get it? I really want to challenge you to apply this intention of satisfaction to your own life today. Before you make your next request at work, before you lodge your next complaint to a friend, or express your next desire at home, just take a moment to pause. Figure out the net outcome for yourself first. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and I will leave you to ponder that question.